So now it's my privilege to introduce a friend and a mentor, so I will try not to screw this up, Rich. So Rich was born in the Midwest. He got his education, law degree in college. He served in Vietnam in the United States Army. He founded, built, and led a great company, which I had the great privilege to work for, and learn from him for over 20 years. It's one of the largest infrastructure companies in North America. 40% of the natural gas that moves through the United States is moved and stored by those assets. So he formed the Kinder Foundation with his wife, Nancy. They entered into the Giving Pledge, and they have directed their philanthropy at Houston with parks, museums, schools, truly transformational investments in our community. He was honored last night in the latest news, inducted into the Texas Business Hall of Fame. So pick from any of those things what you're going to choose to be amazed by. But he's an amazing man, and I'm delighted to invite him to the stage for a fireside chat. This is not the setting that you and I are used to interacting in. What is the biggest disconnect that you see today? We are an opportunity machine in Houston. We generate tens of thousands of new jobs every year. We have a large school-age population. What's the biggest disconnect between getting our students, our young people, connected with the opportunities we create here?
Steve, that's a great question. I think
Yeah. Push it up. Yeah.
Better now? Okay. I think the key is education. What we have is a great ability to create jobs, but we don't have enough people who are qualified to fill all those jobs. And that's such a multifaceted problem. First, of course, it starts with K through 12 education. We all know what the problems and the successes and failures are there. But I think beyond that, when you look at even when someone graduates from high school, they don't go on to get trained in anything specific that qualifies them for a lot of these jobs that we are seeing open here in Houston. I'll give you an example. At our foundation, we've started looking more carefully at what happens to graduates of really good schools. And by this I mean schools like Kippen, yes, and others who are tracking mostly economically disadvantaged students. They really encourage them to act out their dreams. And yet we find that even in those schools, only about 35% of them have any kind of degree post-high school within 6 years. And I didn't mean a 4-year college degree. That means a community college degree. That means military service. So that's where we're woefully inadequate. And we're looking at the cause and effect there. It's very difficult, but we found a lot of sort of meaningless things that actually you would think would be meaningless that actually contribute to that lack of performance after high school. We've got to go after that now. As Steve and I have talked, I guess it was the last legislative session in 23. I applaud the fact that they passed legislation tracking the financial incentives at community colleges to how well their students actually perform. So instead of saying, well, you have 10,000 students, so here's the stipend you get, it's did 3,000 of those students actually get a degree? Did 2,000 of them actually get this or that? And that's a step in the right direction. And I think all my lifetime, and that's a long ways, all my lifetime, the dream has always been, well, you got to go to college and get a 4-year college degree. Look, I applaud that. I think it's wonderful, but that's not for everybody. And I think we need to kind of maybe not destroy, but amend that great American dream to say that the key thing is to get qualified to do something that's productive and that helps you economically and societally, and that you move on with your life and really have upward mobility. So I think education is absolutely key. And I think we've just got to continue to stress that. And I know a lot of people in this room are intimately involved with trying to improve our education, but my God, we need to do a lot more.
Very good. So we, as we just heard, we have a lot of institutions in our community that have a role to play here, whether that's employers, educators, public sector. We all have a role to play, and just about everybody is represented in the room here today. What do you see as the role of philanthropy, specifically in moving the needle on economic mobility?
Well, let me say, first of all, philanthropy, I think, can help around the edges. It can't solve all the problems. You're swamped by the amount of public dollars that go into, for example, education versus what we in philanthropy can do. But I do think philanthropy can be a big help around the edges of this problem. One way, I think, and they're certainly doing this at the Kinder Institute at Rice, is studying where the problems really exist and what some of the solutions are. And so I think having raw data is very important. But beyond that, I think the ability to guide people in a right direction is very important. And again, like I said, this post-secondary education, I think, is important. I think it's important that we are emphasizing the fact that the economically disadvantaged portion of this population, if we can't educate these people, we're going to fail as a society. Houston's going to fail, Harris County is going to fail, state of Texas is going to fail, and we just have to do that. And I think philanthropy can cooperate to make some progress along those lines.
So you have led in a variety of contexts, in a for-profit context, now in your work both there and in philanthropy, and you've interacted with a lot of different institutions, so public sector, the universities, et cetera. So how do you adjust your leadership and adjust your approach trying to get things done with those different partners? Well,
I think the key in any circumstance, whether for-profit or non-profit, is people. And for instance, in our philanthropy, and as Steve said, we've elected to concentrate it on Houston. We have learned that the people are the key, whether it's business or philanthropy. And in philanthropy, if you can pick the right people as your partners and make your grants to those people and work with them, generally you have very good results. Just like in business, if you back somebody who's really good and you can trust and you believe they can generate good economic performance, you're going to win. If you back people you don't know or they can't get the job done, you're going to lose. And that's true in philanthropy. And one of the advantages, I think, of our approach to being hyper-focused on one metropolitan area is that we've come to know who the players are and who we can really depend on to take the ball into the end zone. And that makes a hell of a difference. And I think we've been so fortunate in so many ways to have partnered with good people. And I said so many times, you know, a couple of people as good and focused as my wife is, she can't drive this bus by herself, and I can't drive the bus by myself. It takes a whole bunch of people to make for success. And we've had just some great partners. Ruth Lopez Turley at Kinder Institute's fantastic. We've had great partners with the Memorial Park Conservancy, with Buffalo Bio Partnership, with MD Anderson and Children's, Texas Children's now in our new cancer center that we're just starting to develop. So we've had some great partners, and I think that's the key. The people are the key. I think then we've tried to take that and we've tried to think big. Our philosophy is that we believe in transformational grants, and we define transformational very simply as something wouldn't have got done if we didn't step in and support it. And so that probably angers a lot of people because we don't just give out money because, well, here's something, here's something, here's something. We try to really concentrate on things that we think will make a big difference in the ability of this community to grow and prosper.
So I can tell you at Kinder Morgan, when Rich said jump, the answer was how high.
Yeah, right.
But when you're dealing with a governmental entity or with a university, maybe tell a couple of stories about how those interactions. So you've invested in the Kinder Institute of Urban Research at Rice, the Constitutional Institute at University of Missouri, but then in building out the parks and things like that, you're interacting with a lot of governmental agencies. So talk about, give us a couple stories on how you learned to deal with those institutions.
Well, first let me start by saying that, you hear these political candidates talk about, the interviewer says, name one mistake you've made, and the guy scratches his head. Well, let me think a little bit. If they asked me that question, I would say, you want my mistakes from today or yesterday? So we've made a lot of mistakes. We've gotten some things right, some things wrong. But one thing we've learned is that you've got to partner with government. Philanthropy simply cannot accomplish a lot of the things that we work on if you don't have the help from government. And for example, on all of our park projects, we have worked with the city of Houston, 4 different mayors now, with the county, and with the flood control district, all to the end that once we've put our money and effort into building a park, then we want to make sure it gets maintained. And so, to be specific, on Buffalo Biopark, for example, just up the road on Allen Parkway, as part of the funding, we got the TERS and the city to commit to provide maintenance dollars for 40 years. So when we put the money in, and we had a lot of other people obviously helped to build that park, we knew that we were going to get a flat amount of money escalated for inflation for 40 years to maintain that park. And the city said, well, that's fine. I think we can do that. And the day before the grant was supposed to be final, and this is a different administration, but I got a call from the city attorney who said, I'm not so sure, Rich, that we can really do that. And so we need to hold this up. And I said, well, you can hold it up all you want, but our money is disappearing at 5 o'clock today if we don't have this deal. We got the deal. So that's the only time in philanthropy you have any clout is before you write the check. But this is an example of what you try to do. You have to cooperate with the government, and you have to work with them. I think one of the few things we've done right is this idea of public-private partnerships. In every project we've done, we've had an agreement where we and other philanthropies put up part of the money, did part of the work, and the governments, whether, as I said, city or county, have made specific commitments, particularly with regard to maintenance in the future. And I think that's really important. So we've made a lot of mistakes, like I say, but I think in general, really these public-private partnerships have been a success for us. And I would encourage anybody in this sector to really work closely with whoever is administering your government.
So can you give us an example with an academic institution? Those are pretty easy, right?
Right. Well, we've had, at Rice, for example, we've had great relationships, and I think you have to start at the top of the institution with David Lebron and now Reggie DeRoche and the whole team. And there, I think, setting out the clear objectives for what you're trying to create. In this case, we like to think of it as a think tank, but a do tank too, at the Kinder Institute. And I think having your objectives set up front and having, again, a commitment from Rice and our other foundations at the University of Missouri, in both instances, we agreed to put up a certain amount of money into an endowment. They can draw on that every year, but the universities also agreed to contribute certain amounts of housing for the Institute, a certain amount of stipend every year to help on specific projects. So again, it's a partnership. I think anybody in philanthropy or business who thinks they can go alone and by God, I'll conquer the hill and everybody be damned, I'm going up the hill. This doesn't work. You got to have a lot of people to help you climb that hill. And that's what we've tried to do.
So there is a lot of energy around moving the needle on economic mobility. We have a lot of institutions that are working on it. In Houston, I think sometimes we find ourselves running 100 miles an hour in our own lane, and we also find opportunities to collaborate. I quote my friend Steve Ives at the Y all the time on this. When he got to Houston, he said he found there are no walls here. Once people find that somebody's working on something, they can contribute to it and work together, then we move the needle. But so what do you observe? We have a lot of institutions. How do we break through the barriers and get people to work together on this particular North Star? What do you observe, and what guidance or advice would you give?
Well, I think communication is the key. And of course, I think the Greater Houston Partnership plays a real role in that. It brings together a broad swath of Houston with a lot of movers and shakers that can help get things done. But beyond that, I just think you need to have communication at every level. And for instance, in the world of philanthropy, actually Nancy and Ann Stern of the Houston Endowment a couple years ago created a real informal working group, and they now have a group of the major foundations in town that meet every couple of months, and they just have lunch and talk about what their goals are, what problems they see, how can we cooperate to better achieve our goals. Doesn't mean that everybody's marching in lockstep. Well, we're going to give to this, you need to give to this. But it's, hey, this is an interesting idea you're pursuing. Let's see some results from that. We'd like to look at the same thing, that kind of thing. It's really a matter of communication. And I think one of the strengths of Houston is that, as you say, there are no walls. I think there's a lot of cooperation. I believe it is the most philanthropic city I've ever known. And people ask me, why is that? I think it's because there are no barriers in Houston to upward mobility. There are economic barriers and problems with housing and everything else. But in terms of people who've come to Houston and been successful, nobody asks, well, who was your great-grandfather? You know, where was your grandfather educated? It's what have you done in Houston that determines how you're viewed. And so I think people, because of that really open society in terms of business and philanthropy, I think people tend to want to give back to the community that's been very good to them. I know that's how we feel anyway. And, you know, in the Giving Pledge, we go to these meetings, and boy, some people have just wonderful ideas, and they can postulate all kinds of great things. And believe me, some of the things they're doing is tremendous. But people look at us, well, you're just concentrating on one city, you know, why is that? Well, I think, you know, the ability to actually get things done at a local level is really important. And I think you can drive the bus further by doing something in an area you really know something about than you can if you try to pontificate and talk about, well, I'm going to do this on the West Coast, I'm going to do this on the East Coast. So that's our philosophy, and I think communication is absolutely the key. And I look around the room, and so many of you we've worked with over the years, and you're just you're doing the Lord's work, whatever that is. But you're doing a whale of a good job, and I know we're just delighted to be a small part of what makes Houston a better place.
So you talked about transformational being kind of the guiding principle of what you give to. What about the whys around what you're giving to, like parks, museums, schools? What's the why behind those? Well,
when we started this foundation over a quarter century ago, 27 years ago, we made three decisions. The first was that we wanted to concentrate on Houston. The second was transformational. And then we said the third thing is we're going to look at areas that are underserved, that are not being addressed now, whether from shortfall in public monies or shortfall in philanthropic support. And we identified three areas. The first was education. Second was urban green space. And the third was kind of a catch-all, quality of life. But we think all three of those things were and are underserved, and that philanthropy dollars directed toward those could really make a difference. And to talk about urban green space, this is not an elitist thing about urban green space. You go out and walk the SLT in Memorial Park on a Saturday morning, you will find several different languages spoken. You will find everybody of different races, different ethnic backgrounds. This is a great melting pot. And for the city of Houston and Harris County, if we want to attract the best people here in years to come, we don't do it just by having skyscrapers and job jobs. People want urban green space. They want sports teams. They want museums. But we think urban green space was terribly underfunded. And I'll give you a categorical answer. Take the 100 largest cities in the United States, and in terms of public dollars spent on urban green space, Houston consistently ranks between 90 and 95, way down at the bottom. But if you put philanthropy into the process, we rank about 45th or 50th. And in terms of actual philanthropic dollars going into urban green space, raw numbers, we are second in the country to New York City. And that's the difference that philanthropy can make in an important thing. So I think you pick your things carefully, and then you focus on those things and try to drive those things to success. Will you have failures? Yes. Will you have success? You hope. You know, Winston Churchill once said that success is not final, failure is not fatal. It's the courage to carry on that really counts. And I think that's true in business, and that's true in philanthropy.
How many books a year do you read, Rich?
Yeah, I usually read about 50 books a year, a book a week, yeah.
What are you reading right now?
You know, I just finished Andrew Ross Sorkin's new book, 1929. It's about the crash and the beginning of the Roosevelt administration, and it's very different from a lot of other treatises you read on that era. It really gets into the people who were involved for good and bad. It's a fascinating book. He's a really bright guy.
History and biographies. Why?
Why?
Yeah, why do you mostly read history and biography?
Well, I think it's very important. You know, I think it gives you more understanding. You know, with the due apologies to anybody in the room who makes their money as a business advisor and tells you the habits of successful people and all that. I've learned more by reading history and biography than I could ever learn from somebody who's going to advise me on what makes sense in business. Now, I'll give you an example. If you look at the beginning of World War II, when there was a significant part of the British cabinet who wanted to cut a deal with Hitler, and over a course of 5 days, there's a great book on that, 5 Days in May, Churchill turned around the cabinet and said, "We're not going to give up." And that made all the difference, you know.
What's your favorite place that's not Houston, Texas?
I think it would be Colorado. We have a place outside of Aspen. We love it. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you for everything you guys do for our city.
Thank you.
Thank you.